Cha-Cha, it's Jess with Emotional Fire Academy, here today to talk about how not to take things so personally. Now subscribe to my channel if you are a highly sensitive person who's ready to up-level in life. I have put out new videos every week about tools, tips, and tricks to do just that. And who am I? I'm Jess. I'm your driver operator. Welcome to my channel. I help highly sensitive people up-level in life. I'm a master NLP practitioner and a veteran firefighter. I'm so glad you're here. And today, this is a subject that's close to my heart because I myself used to be a big culprit of this. And it seems to be a common thing with highly sensitive people because I think my theory is, obviously I'm one person, that the emotional vividness gene makes it really difficult for us to separate our experience of life from ourselves, from our identity. And that's really what this comes down to. So stay tuned to the end. It's got some great content for you today. And yeah, let's dive right into this topic. So I want to refer you also to the video I made entitled, Why Am I So Sensitive and Cry Easily Over Everything? I'll put the link above. That was the first video I kind of introduced this triangle, and essentially what it is an explanation of sensitivity and how from the three elements of my emotional fire triangle, different sensitivities arise. So, quick refresher, if you haven't already seen my triangle, welcome back. I haven't had it out for a while. So I believe, and in NLP, essentially we realize that our conditioning, our physiology, and our language are what kind of come together to essentially incite emotion. So when you have all three elements in different balance, you're going to get that fire of emotion kind of burning in the middle. Same thing with a regular fire. Heat, oxygen, and fuel come together in different amounts. Boom, you have your fire. And so the types of sensitivity then that arise from each of these sides of the triangle, to me, in my opinion, are on the physiology side. So this is dealing with our bodies, right? What's happening in our bodies. That's where true HSP-ness comes from. In my opinion, it's a genetic predisposition. And so that's where HSP-ness really kind of falls. When we go down to the conditioning, that's where our insecurities happen. So when people say insecurity, this is kind of the side of the triangle that I think of, and we're going to dive into this a little bit more towards the end of the video and really get into the meat of how to clear up those insecurities, because that's really, when we're taking something personally, that's the side that's getting activated on the triangle. And then on the language side, our suggestibility, right? How apt are we to believe not only what other people say to us, but then what we say to ourselves in our own head? And obviously, thinking level stuff. And then saying, what do we then say back to people or say to the world or say to ourselves? So when we take things personally, and I want to say that this is very, I had to drink my own Kool-Aid yesterday because I actually had this triggered in myself, and I used this teaching because I'd been thinking about it. And it really does work. So when you really get this concept on a deep level and you start applying it, you're gonna see pretty quick results with this. Taking things personally happens really on an identity level. And so that comes back to the conditioning part, right? Our internal representations. This is where our belief, assumption, and identity kind of fall, right? It's this structure we've created psychologically in our head that helps us function in the world. It makes it just easier for us to move through the world because of our identities. And I've talked about identities and personas before, and how who we actually are, I think, as people is ultimate potential, right? We can be any identity, we can be any persona. But there's one that we've kind of crafted as, if I ask you, who are you? You're going to start telling me your concept of your identity, your self-concept. You're going to say, well, I'm a mom, I'm a firefighter, I'm a whatever, and list all these things that you believe that you are, that you identify with. And so when we take something personally, we identify with something that was said or done in our sphere, right? It could have been, and most often, this is what I find, it's something that somebody else said or did, but then that we take offense to. We then internalize, because really it's all our internal perceptions, right? We're only experiencing the world through our internal filters and our senses and our representations, and that's really the only way we interact with the world. So, but we perceive it as that somebody outside of us has done this to us, and we're now pissed off. We're offended about this. So, and it happens very quickly. So it's typically an activation of all three sides. Like ABC, bam, bam, bam. Fire's burning in the middle. We're pissed off. We're offended. And it can happen almost instantaneously. So when we think about wanting to change this pattern, because if we are used to taking things personally, taking offense to things very quickly, we want to start, considering longer term habit change. Because if it's a habitual thing, if you get to that fire really quickly, you've been working on, you've got all these things kind of well conditioned, essentially. You're like dialed in, like you are awesome at taking things personally. And that's okay, because that means that if you're ready to change that, if you're aware of it as a habit in yourself and you're ready to change that, then you have equal potential for being really good at not taking things personally, right? As far as potential goes. So that's the good news. You can, if this is a habit you've maybe been doing, and this was a habit that I did, I think really in the worst times of my HSP-ness, when I was really down on myself and low, I took everything personally. Everything related to me. Everything pissed me off. And so I understand being in that state and having that drive to change it and that motivation. So if you are there, I congratulate you for getting to that spot. And I want to encourage you that, okay, let me show you kind of how it works. And then you can start developing then the new habits to not take things so personally and and stop identifying with them. So if you are having, it's okay if you suddenly take things personally. This is what I experienced yesterday. You suddenly take things personally, you're triggered, and that's kind of the reaction phase. You have that amygdala kick in, you're pissed off about something. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Like I said, it's just a habitual thing that we've gotten really good at, and we just need to get really good at not being good at that. And so once you've kind of come out of the reaction a little bit or been able to step back, usually takes about 20 minutes for your amygdala to kind of calm down after any type of perceived insult. So about 20 minutes later, you'll get much faster at it in the process. Yesterday, I was able to turn it around in about a minute. So, allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. It's okay. You've practiced this. Let it roll. Let it rip. But just know that then when you move in from the reaction phase to the processing phase, that's when we're going to kind of reframe things. Now, the processing phase to me is kind of where we decide what the perceived event, what evidence it provides for us, right? And essentially this comes down to we're weighing it like, okay, we're looking for proof. Like, oh, this is proof that I'm not a good person or I'm not worthy. And so in that processing phase, that's when we can take conscious control of framing things and then using our perception of what just happened to us as evidence for one belief or another. So let's go deeper into this. I don't know why I burp every time in the middle of my videos. Anyway, let's go deeper into this. So what are some of the solutions? What does this look like? So short term, let yourself cool down a little bit. It's okay. It's okay to have a reaction. Experience the reaction, The short-term game and the long-term game are both, kind of pointing towards habit change, and that's what we want. We want to just feel like we're complete and we're whole, and no matter what anyone else says or does to us, it's not a personal attack to us, right? It's not an affront to who we are, and we don't allow it to take away from who we are, because that's really the truth. We are whole and intact always. I believe no one is broken. Everyone is whole and intact. We just have habits that make it harder or easier on our life. Taking things personally definitely is a habit that makes things harder. It takes up a lot of energy, time, attention that could be spent elsewhere chasing other goals and dreams. So on the short term, once you've kind of cooled down a little bit, we want to think about what are alternative meanings of this situation? How could I take this a different way? And this has to be believable, because if we're not actually believing it, it's like, well, so let's get an example to make this easier. Let's say somebody tells us we're ugly, and it feels bad. We take it personally. We're like, oh, I can't believe that person said that, or they insinuated that. Usually it's a little more subtle than that. A lot of people don't have the guts and the balls to come out and tell someone they're ugly, but they'll hint at it, or they'll do something a little more subversive. So, but we can pick up on that energy, right? That's what we're taking personally, is that like hidden, like, oh, you just don't think I'm an attractive person. So if we are on the short term, what are alternatives to, okay, this person just told me that, or insinuated that I'm not an attractive person. Okay, so maybe this person is just a jerk, and then providing, again, and we have to, when we're looking at alternatives and we're in that processing phase again, we're weighing evidence. So in order for us to actually believe something, we have to have proof. Our mind has to have proof to, like, oh, this is true. This is why it's hard to just change a belief, because you're going to have that transition period where you need the proof of that new belief that it's actually true. And then it kind of cements into your assumption of like, oh, this is just how things are. So on the short term, you've calmed down enough, you can kind of be like, okay, what are alternatives? This guy's just a jerk, or this girl's just a jerk if they told me that I'm unattractive. Most likely, if they've lashed out to you in that way, they're probably feeling themselves very unattractive, or they've been told that they're unattractive, So then we're looking for alternative explanations of why this person would say it or do it, and maybe judgments about their character that we feel are true. And sometimes even being like, can I really trust everything this person says or does with me? Has this person made 100% good life decisions? And I know this kind of feels like a cheap way to not take things personally. And it kind of is. This is just kind of the making yourself feel better in the moment. Because really we want to be playing the long-term game. And we're going to get into that shortly. We want to be playing the long-term game when it comes to starting to change our habits of not taking things personally. So in the short term, our option is looking at alternatives that are actually plausible to how we can interpret the situation in a way that fits with our existing beliefs. It's like, well, I kind of already knew that person. I mean, even if it's like, wow, that person is having a really bad day. I actually know this person, and they're having a really bad day, and they're just pissed off, and they just let this slip. And I know that they're pretty insecure about their own looks, and they put a lot of value on looks. And maybe they just wanted to make me feel really bad about myself. And they succeeded. So looking at alternatives, really consider the full spectrum of alternative meanings to whatever you're taking personally or taking offense to. Look at alternative interpretations for it. That is a solid short-term strategy. That's what I did yesterday when I took it personally what somebody had said to me, and this, again, is also helpful for text messages or times when you can't hear the person's tone of voice, because tone of voice carries a lot of information for us. It really kind of lets us know. And so how we interpret a text sometimes is how we're feeling about ourselves in the day, something that's, coming up and kind of triggery for us. And that's how we're going to interpret the text, because it really is just words. And without the person's body language or tonality behind the words can literally mean anything when you think about that. And so something that is a wound for you or an insecurity, you might automatically take that personally because that's how you're feeling and that's the filter you're working from. And so starting to dive into our insecurities and start to heal them is really the long-term game we want to be playing for not taking things personally and for feeling whole and intact. And I want to explain this from a way that I came up with that I think is really clear. So long term, when we're talking about feeling insecure, being sensitive in the sense of having an insecurity about things, and I think this is where a lot of people automatically peg the term sensitive. Oh, you're too sensitive. You're too insecure. What they're really saying is you're too insecure about something. Let's dive deeper. What is insecurity? I think it's a wound. What is a wound? It's an insecurity. It means you're not secure about something. It means you're not sure. So this is kind of the equation I come up with. Wound equals insecurity equals not secure equals not sure. So really you could call an insecurity a not surety because it really means having a wound, a psychological wound or a trigger. Feeling insecure about something is that you're still on the fence. And I realized like this is really what it is to be insecure about something. You're on the fence about something. It means that you have had evidence for two competing beliefs. So if I'm insecure about how I look, just as an example, and I think most people have had this insecurity at one point in their life, maybe still do. You've gotten evidence for the belief, I'm beautiful. You've also gotten evidence for the belief, I'm ugly. And so you have these two beliefs kind of in your conditioning that are active. They're both active and they're kind of jockeying for which one ever is dominant. So when you get evidence of, oh, I'm beautiful, someone gives you a compliment, they tell you look really nice today, it feels really good. It feels really good. And you're like, oh, that's evidence for this belief. And you put a little mental weight on the scale for that belief. Like, oh yeah. And then when somebody says something to you that you then interpret as evidence for, oh, I'm ugly. Oh my God, they didn't like my shirt, or they gave me they looked me up and down. You put that little weight on the evidence for the belief of I'm ugly. And so these scales are constantly like balancing, and that is to me what insecurity is it's just these two competing beliefs. And so if when we talk about healing a wound, healing an insecurity, all we need to do is make a decision. That's what healing is. Healing is making a decision. And I never realized this. I used to hear healing and I'm like, what the heck does that mean? What does healing something actually mean? What does it look like? What does it feel like? I don't understand this because we don't actually do healing, right? Our body does healing naturally we don't have to really be engaged in the process. Like if I told you to heal something, would you know what to do? Because our body knows it automatically and does it automatically, but the ambiguity of the word healing, I think, is clarified by looking at it as you just have to pick. You just have to pick which belief you want to entertain. Either you're pretty or you're ugly. And then what we do in order to fully heal that, right, we want to just fully commit to that belief. Like, I am only going to accept evidence that I'm beautiful, that I'm gorgeous, that I'm pretty, and I'm only going to accept that evidence. And so what we do then is we make the decision. That's pretty much making that commitment, that decision. That is the conscious part of healing, right? So when we commit to that, we make the decision, we then kind of stand in this place of certainty. It's like, I know I'm pretty, I know I'm beautiful, I know I'm attractive. And that kind of certainty, when somebody does say something to you that doesn't fit with that belief that you've chosen and you're sticking with, and there is no shaking you from it, and it doesn't matter what anybody says or does, you're going to hold that belief, and you're only going to collect evidence to support that belief. When they say something that offers you contrary to what that belief is, it just kind of bounces off of you. And you don't take that you start to then automatically go into alternatives. And you're going to go faster and faster. You're going to be like, you know what? They're entitled to their opinion, but that's not what I believe. You know what? They're having a bad day, and that's okay. I'm strong enough to stand in this and not be shaken from it by something they said or did to me. And so really, when we choose the belief, we're just collecting evidence that supports it. What do we do when we're first starting with evidence for the other belief, the one that we kind of want to kill, the one that we want to be done with, the one that we want to push out of our consciousness and not entertain so that we don't have that wound or that insecurity anymore? Essentially, we ignore anything that might add evidence to that. So what does ignoring mean? We just don't attach meaning to it. We either don't attach meaning to it, or we attach an alternative meaning that kind of throws it off somewhere else into either, that's outside of me. It really has nothing to do with me. So what do you think about this? So this is how we learn not to take things personally on both the short term and the long term, and really start to not take things personally and feel whole and complete within ourselves. And really, it's just about deciding which identity, which beliefs we want to subscribe to, and eliminating our insecurities, kind of solidifying the identity that we actually want, as opposed to having a lot of these competing beliefs within ourselves that then we have to kind of deal with the energy of both of them in our lives, and then attend to both of them and try and whereas we could just decide on one, stick with it, make that our identity, and stand sure in that, and then we won't be taking them as personally. So comment below, what do you think? What did you think of this concept? I was excited to share it with you. And let me know. Please reach out to me if you are a highly sensitive person who does feel really insecure, who feels really unsure, who feels like they want to clean all this up so they don't have that fire burning in the middle. I have a 3-month flammable to fireproof program on my website, emotionalfireacademy.com, and I would be honored to help you. So have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching. Bye.